snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys! So I am here today to do a review of Shadows of Self, which is by Brandon Sanderson. This one is the fifth one chronologically in the Mistborn world, and it's set hundreds of years after the initial Mistborn trilogy. It's basically the first one in a new trilogy, which is set 100 years later, but there is a small little sort of standalone book which sets up the characters called Alloy of Law. That's the fourth one in the series, so I've already read that a couple years ago, maybe last year. And this one, Shadows of Self, just came out fairly recently. I did read it sort of the day it came out, but I didn't end up reviewing it until just now, so apologies for that. I read it with a whole group of people. I'll link them all down below, and we had lots of different opinions because most people I read it with really are big fans of Sanderson, as am I, and really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy this one quite as much as most of Sanderson's other books. In fact, I would say that this series, the second instalment of the Mistborn world, set hundreds of years later following the characters of Wax and Wayne, just don't work that well for me. I find that this series is interesting, it's fun, but it's nothing more than that for me, whereas the initial Mistborn trilogy was so good and I was so hooked into the characters and I loved them so much and I wanted them to succeed in everything that they were doing. This series, I don't care about the characters, which sounds bad to say because I do really enjoy Sanderson's writing in most of his books, but in this series I never once connected fully with the characters. I do think that the character of Wayne, who is sort of the comedic relief character, is really interesting, and I like the fact that Sanderson is trying to do something a little bit different with his world in terms of progressing the world forward hundreds of years and showing how the world has developed. I think it's a good idea, I think it's a nice idea, but I don't love the characters as much, and I don't think that it works as well as the first series did. I think probably this is mostly down to me and personal preference of my own reading tastes. I prefer long epic fantasies, as many of you know from watching my channel, and so this series, although it is based off of an epic fantasy, it's now more veering into flintlock and steampunk, and it's got kind of elements of both in small ways. I just don't read as much flintlock as I do epic fantasy, and I do have problems with flintlock fantasy in that it's not my favourite genre or subgenre of the fantasy genre, so it's harder for me to connect with characters when we have a lot less time with them and also a lot faster plot, because these books are fun, they're adventurous, you get to see the characters bouncing ideas off of each other, having a laugh, being funny, being engaging, but you don't necessarily get to see the depth and you don't necessarily get to see the understanding of these characters as well as you do some of the initial Mistborn characters. I personally also had the problem of I guessed some of the plot twists, and for me that is a really bad thing. If I can guess a plot twist and it doesn't surprise me, then it's kind of not a great moment for me. It's kind of an, oh great, so that happened. And that happened a few times in this book. I guessed one of the major plot twists and wasn't even slightly surprised when we got to that point, and so it kind of fell a little bit flat for me. I just couldn't really love it. One of the things I do think is interesting with this series is that the religious aspects are very heavily drummed into this series, and I quite like religion in books most of the time, but even I felt like this was a little bit heavy-handed at points. We have moments where one of our main characters talks to the god of this world straight on and they just chat, and there's reasoning for why it's okay, and there's reasoning why there's only this character who can do it, but it just didn't work that well for me because it made me lose my immersion. It made me think that this wasn't a real story, it wasn't something I could believe in, because I didn't like it as much as the first series. And I know that there's tiny elements of it in the first series, and the religion thing is pushed in the first series, but it just was heavily done in this series, and I'm not against religion, but I don't like to be prescribed ideas, and this felt as though it was more of a prescription of ideas and beliefs than anything else at some points. With all of that said, it is a really fun ride. It is a fun adventure story, and it has some great moments of character development and intrigue, and there are some very interesting elements of the world that have evolved over time, and there are some elements that haven't evolved, and it's interesting to see what Sanderson has decided to take forward into this new era. I will be continuing with the series because the ending of this book had some things that I didn't anticipate. Some of it I did, and some of it I didn't. And the things that I didn't, I'm interested in learning more about. But the major twists I did anticipate, so that's not great. But I do want to know more, and I do like Sanderson as an author. I never find it hard to get through his series. I listened to this one on audiobook, which I think was really helpful because I reckon if I'd been reading it, I maybe wouldn't have got that into it. I do, though, believe that the actual physical edition has some nice, sort of newspaper layouts on certain sections, and the audiobook didn't translate that as well as it probably could have. So I will be picking up the physical edition. I don't have it right now, but I will be getting it when it comes out in paperback because I have Alloy of Law in paperback, and it makes sense to have them both in paperback. Because I'm not loving this series, it's not my favourite Sanderson series, I'm not worried about going out and picking it up straight away. Whereas with the Stormlight Archives, I will definitely be getting book 3 as soon as it comes out in hardback, and also the same with the Reckoners series. Those are my two ongoing Sanderson series that I love. So I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a likeable read, but it was nothing more than that for me, and it definitely had some problems. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you guys have read this, do let me know. Did you like it? I know loads of people gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I was obviously the odd one out in our group for giving it only 3, but I am intrigued to hear what everyone else thinks. If you've read the original Mistborn series, did you think it compared? Because it just paled in comparison to me. But I would love to hear your thoughts, so leave them down below. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little